So up next, we're going to have a Con Osha update. Robert Hunt, he joined Con Osha in 19 as a trainee and has served in his role as Occupational Safety Training Specialist since 2022. Robert Hunt.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? I know this room is quite large, and I was explaining to our AV folks, usually I'm walking about here, so hopefully I can stay still and you guys can hear me throughout the presentation. Spend about an hour with you guys talking about Con Osha. We'll add a little bit in about federal OSHA as well, so kind of, name this Intro to OSHA for wastewater operators. You guys today, maybe some of you guys have heard this presentation before, either virtually with me or in another fashion as well. So maybe a review. If not, maybe you guys get something out of the next hour or so. My supervisor here is here as well, so some of the images that you guys are going to see actually from inspections that she was on herself, myself not out there on inspection, so but if we want to keep the questions to the end, that would be most helpful for us, okay? So we have just a quick disclaimer. Of course, we are a regulatory agency, and the legislation, they're the ones that kind of have to obviously promulgate the regulations that we have, and things change, of course, right? If you guys watching the national news, things obviously changing there. So just a quick disclaimer, our legal department wants to let you guys know, right? Even though I might mention something today, things may change even tomorrow, who knows? We have recent changes with our record keeping, maybe some things with health hazards like heat coming down the road, but who knows, okay? OSHA.gov, we get a lot of our information from there. As a state agency, state plan, we have to be as strict as they are, okay? We can be more strict. Here in the state of Connecticut, we don't have too many regulations. We have a couple of air contamination regulations that are a little bit more strict, but other than that, everything is just about the same as OSHA. So here at Con Osha, we kind of use that relationship to kind of speak interchangeably, so that's also why some of you guys that are here in the private sector, this information is going to apply to you guys just the same. So that's kind of the biggest thing, kind of one of my uphill battles at my outreach position as an occupational training specialist is to kind of differentiate that relationship, Con Osha versus OSHA. So I can do this presentation over and over and over, and people will still call into our office. That's fine. So in the beginning here, kind of the first few set of slides is going to be about the intro to OSHA piece, and then we'll kind of move into more specifics for you guys as wastewater operators. So we're going to talk about why OSHA is important to you, some rights, responsibilities, go into a little bit of our OSHA standards. I actually compiled the data, really recent data. This is pretty cool to see what we have been finding our compliance officers actually at your guys' sites here in the state of Connecticut. And then there's a little bit information about where you can go to help. So again, getting maybe into a little bit more of the boring stuff here, but OSHA's mission, again, kind of the same mission here at Con Osha, and this actually was changed recently, so it's a little bit more wordy, of course, to kind of get out all the functions that OSHA does. But OSHA's mission is to ensure America's workers have safe and healthful working conditions free from unlawful retaliation. OSHA carries out its mission by setting and enforcing standards, enforcing anti-retaliation provisions of the Osha Act and other federal whistleblower laws, providing and supporting training, outreach, and education, my piece, right, why I'm here today, and ensuring state OSHA programs are at least as effective as federal OSHA, what I just mentioned here for Con Osha, and furthering a national system of worker safety and health protection. So that's exactly it, the black and white. Of course, a lot of the information that I'm going to read to you guys is off the slides. We are a regulatory agency, so right, the black and white is what it says, but hopefully I don't bore you guys with too many slides like that. So here's the slide that as maybe one of my favorite, can spend like ton of time on this one slide, but hopefully this slide explains itself. So Con Osha versus federal OSHA, okay? So here is myself on the left side there, Con Osha, who I represent, and the folks behind me, and then on the right side there, federal OSHA, okay? So here at Con Osha, we have our one centralized office out of the Department of Labor in Wethersfield. We cover the entire state, okay, for the public sector, all right? So people always say, oh, I'm public sector, and it's like, yeah, you may have public Sorry, if I touch that, that's not going to be good. So like if I have a school that allows kids from the public, they think they're a public school, but yet they're like maybe a private Montessori school or something like that. That's not us, right? Whereas a publicly funded school actually is us. So just kind of clear with that. Same thing for you guys, right? So if we have a water treatment facility plant that is actually taxpayer dollars, you're getting paid by that municipality, then you're going to come under our jurisdiction, Con OSHA. But now if we have a private sector company that company is paid by, that's different. That's going to be federal OSHA, okay? But again, as I said just moments ago, the regulations still the same, okay? So we still find this similar hazards regardless if we're federal OSHA or Con OSHA. So for, again, compliance coverage, there it is, the state government, so all the state agencies, DOT, our deep friends here today, yes, we have jurisdiction over them as well, and then, of course, all the local government. Interesting, without Con OSHA, none of those folks had protection, okay? So way back when Nixon signed in the Osha Act, it was just for private sector employees. Those were the only ones that actually had protections. There were other protections, other regulations out there, but then the state of Connecticut came on board with that as strict as federal OSHA, and then now everyone here in the state of Connecticut, regardless, private and public, has protection under OSHA rule. Our consultation coverage, this is the piece that you can see is missing from the federal side over there. So the feds do not have any consultation whatsoever. This is a really, really great program. I have a slide dedicated to it at the end. Hopefully you guys have heard about it before. I always say it's kind of like the best kept secret for some reason. I don't know why it's a secret. Everyone should know about it. Every single treatment plant hopefully should have a relationship with our consultation program. That would be really great. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but as you can see, it's for both the public and private sector. We have a full team for both sides of the house. And again, over there on the federal OSHA side, you can see they just have compliance. This is for private businesses and the federal government. So a little bit of statistics here. On average, every year, more than 5,000 Americans die. So if we kind of do the numbers down to the basics, like somewhere between 12, 13, 15 on maybe a bad year or so, every single day, 15 Americans dying. Every single day. So that's still a continuing problem. However, it's much better than it was when the OSHA Act first was signed by the federal government at that time, like more than 30 to 40 people dying every single day because they went to work, something happened at work, and they didn't get to come home to their families. Perhaps as many as 50,000 workers die from illnesses, so this is part of the house that those health hazards that we have, if you will, things like air contaminants that I was speaking of, maybe hazardous chemicals, noise is one of them as well, that we are exposed to over time, and it's not an immediate, right? You don't put your hand in some blade and you get chopped off, an immediate effect like a safety factor, but those health things that we kind of underestimate sometimes, we need to remind ourselves of over time, those kind of chronic long-term effects that yes, we still have a standard for them, and it's because we're looking down the road, maybe 10, 20, 30 years for that person's life. And then millions of workers suffer serious non-fatal injury and illnesses annually. Of course, we're working on lowering that number. So OSHA inspections are conducted by what authority? So the OSHA Act, so this is through this presentation, this is where you guys kind of have to focus in a little bit about, again, federal versus state. Okay, so the OSHA Act has nothing to do with the state of Connecticut. If it was just the OSHA Act, then none of you guys in the public sector would have protection. So that's why we have Connecticut General Statute, Chapter 571. That's basically our OSHA Act here in Connecticut. And those are sections 367 through 385. So that's the black and white, that's the regulations, that's what allows us to be here today and conduct our inspections that we do. Okay, so OSHA conducts inspections without advance notice, only in rare circumstances. If somebody is like in imminent danger, about to die, or died, we can say, hey, we're on the way. But in most cases, our compliance officers are operating on kind of a surprise inspection, if you will. They will show up and they'll say, I'm here to do maybe a planned inspection, or maybe they got a complaint. All right, and of course, if anyone does, if I were an inspector and I said, hey, I'm gonna be there tomorrow at 10 a.m., there is some implications there in the law that could affect me, whether it's a jail term. So let's talk about specifically the law itself. So this is, again, in 1970, the act was signed, 5A1, or what we call the General Duty Clause. And this is exact same language we find in our Connecticut General Statutes in 31-370A. Okay, so the 370A is our version of our general duty clause. And it says, again, the black and white, that shall furnish to each of his employees employment in a place of employment which are free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm to his employees. So we use this particular law, if you will, anytime that there's not another standard that we don't have, and we'll go through some of those specific standards a little bit later on the slides, our 1910 for general industry and 1926 for construction. So if we look a little bit more into that for our employer responsibility, some of you guys managers, directors, et cetera here today, so we want to ensure that you guys provide a workplace free from recognized hazards and complying with the OSHA standards. Training is a really big one for us. Many of the standards require training. I actually have a slide dedicated to that that's pretty lengthy. There's actually a document out there that OSHA has published that's like 300 pages that explains all of the training requirements throughout all of the OSHA standards. We try to keep it a little bit brief here, and I'll show you, again, on that slide to kind of boil things down a little bit. You also have to keep records of injuries and illnesses. This is formalized through our logs. I have a slide dedicated a little bit more on record keeping as well, but those of you guys that know those 300, 300A, 301, those are our forms, of course. Again, the law requiring you guys to keep them. The federal OSHA law is a little bit different. There are some exemptions in their laws. Here in the state of Connecticut, no exemptions. So all of you guys under the public sector must keep these logs. You also have to provide medical exams when required by OSHA standards. A big one for us right off the top, you can think of, say, like a noise exposure. If we have a really loud plant and we have a hearing conservation program, that might be a medical exam that we have to send our employees to. We also have our whistleblower protections, our non-discrimination. For the federal OSHA, that's 11C, that's the whistleblower section, we say 11C of the Act. We also need to post OSHA citations and abatement verification notices. If our compliance officers come out, we need to make sure that you guys aren't hiding that information from your employees. We want them to know what was going on. And then in certain circumstances, we have to provide and pay for PPE. We can talk about a whole presentation on PPE. Not going to do that today, what we have to pay for and what we don't have to pay for, but most specialized PPE, it is required to be paid for. So a little bit more in depth about their employer responsibilities for record keeping and reporting. So if anyone dies within 8 hours in the job, you need to call it in. All right? That's specifically both for us, the Con OSHA, and for the feds. So if it's a public employee that dies, you need to pick up the phone and call within 8 hours of knowledge. Okay? So maybe it happened at the nighttime, and then you come in the morning, and you're the person responsible, okay, in the morning. But typically, we have great relations with our police and fire, and we're getting in the moment right then and there. So yes, a death is 8 hours. Amputation, loss of an eye, or hospitalization is within 24 hours. And I'm going to show you guys in the next slide the number that we have to call. But aside from that, of course, that's the worst case scenarios, right? When you actually have to pick up the phone and call us, that's the reporting side of things. Most of it is going to be the recording side. So this is those injury and illnesses logs that I was just speaking of, the 300, the 301 form, the long form, and then of course the summary, the 300A, which we're in the phase now where all of you guys should have submitted that through the ITA, the Internet, Injury Tracking Application, and then it should be posted in our facilities as well, that the 300A. We need to make these records available to workers. Again, they kind of have the right to know under the OSH Act. And there is provisions in the law that we have access to this information as well as OSHA. And then as I was just mentioning, we need to have those logs posted. So here it is. There's our number. 24-hour hotline for federal OSHA. Federal OSHA, again, we are an OSHA office. So, of course, if they get a call that is public sector, they will redirect it to us. But 24 hours, this number, if you look at it, the 321, it's easy to remember, 321 OSHA. If we change those to numbers, it's 6742. But 1-800-321-OSHA, we can call it 24/7. Our office, of course, though, you want to speak to someone, you want to speak to me, you want to speak to Lisa, you certainly give us a call Monday through Friday. You can give the main line. We have a great staff. We have a full staff of secretary, staff, administrative staff answering the phone Monday through Friday. So you can just, it's 263-6900. I always mention the 6900 because if you forget the 9, the 6000 is just the general number for Department of Labor, and who knows what you're going to get, unemployment, JAVIS, whatever it is that you don't want, and you want us. So 6900, write to us. Okay, although another employer responsibility is to have the poster. Okay, that number that I just showed you is also on our poster here and signed by our commissioner. So that's the one that is required to be posted in all of our public facilities there, somewhere like a lunchroom, bulletin board, etc. The one on the left here is the federal version of that. So if you are under public sector jurisdiction, we don't need to see both. Of course, we see a lot of places that have both. But yeah, if you're in public sector jurisdiction, municipality, state agency, town, etc., it's going to be that one there with the kind of caution tape stripes. And then any of, again, our private sector folks, maybe you guys are operating in the water treatment facilities, we need to see a poster like this. Interesting as well, we need to have a poster that people understand, so hopefully everyone here understands what I say and speaking English, so these are in English, but maybe you guys have some operating facilities. We work with construction folks that do speak Spanish, so we need to see those as well. So now switching gears just a little bit to the employee side. This is an interesting piece that we always get. Everyone thinks that OSHA is kind of an administrative function and only working with the directors, and that's their duty. Well, interesting. If again we look at the black and white, it says specifically provision for our employees, and it says that they have to follow the law. All right. So each employee shall comply with occupational safety and health standards and all rules, regulations, and orders issued pursuant to this act, which are applicable to his or her, his own actions and conduct. Again, same language in our statutes. All right, so this is why we say this, right? I don't know if you guys can see our friends here, maybe some employee misconduct there, so careful, right? This doesn't necessarily mean, we see this image here, that there's going to be some type of OSHA investigation, some type of OSHA inspection. Of course, obviously, these are employees not following the law. But again, I just showed you guys, again, our employer responsibility versus our employee responsibility. So, right, maybe the employer provided this safe backhoe here, but again, it was the employee's action that decided to, sit in the bucket there and sweep the ground. So again, through our investigations, we're going to reveal that. A big piece of our inspection is interviews, right? So we're going to ask this guy, hey, come over and we talk to you guys, and we're going to say, what was the training that you guys had, using the backhoe here? And, were you guys trained not to sweep the ground like that? I know it sounds kind of elementary, but, right? Oh, yeah, Johnny, he's the supervisor. He tells us all the time not to do that, and, but we do it anyways, right? So you can see there's the difference there. Whereas, no, Johnny never told us we can't do that. This is fine. This is how we, this is how we do the sweeping, right? It's the difference. So, again, versus employer misconduct versus employee misconduct. And of course, we have that regulation there. If we ask our legal folks, I'm not a lawyer by any means, but it's part of the reason that we can let employees go here, right? At will state, hey, they broke the law. They broke our occupational safety and health law. They didn't follow. We told them that was the rules. They continue to break it. They're breaking the law. Okay, so some more rights that the employees have under the OSHA Act. As you saw that poster, those are explained there a little bit more in detail, but briefly, again, they have a right to a safe and healthful work environment. They have also the right to report unsafe and unhealthful working conditions to two different parts, right? To you guys, as a supervisor, they have the right to speak up. They have, hey, this chemical that I use is not labeled. I have no idea what it's doing. It's bubbling. They have a right to speak up to you guys. They cannot be retaliated for that. They also have the right to go to us, and they have the choice. They can go right to you and us. They can go to just us. They can go to just you, all right? So both acts are protected, regardless of who they go to, the officials. They also, if they come to us, they have the right to remain anonymous. Of course, on the complaint form, there is a place for the name or employee representative's name. That must be filled out, but they can choose to remain anonymous to the employer. Okay, so also the right to know is kind of a big theme with us. So information and access to that information, hazardous chemicals through our SDSs. We might show up on inspection and we see all of these MSDSs there. We might start asking some questions. Hey, when was the last time somebody looked at that? Because it's been over a decade since our program has been updated from MSDS to SDS. Also injury and illnesses, we talked about record keeping in those forms, right? If an employee asks about that, hey, what was our DART rate for whatever reason they got that? Maybe they listened to my presentation and they said to go back to ask about their DART rate. Yeah, they have access to that information. They have the right to know that. And exposure data and medical records. This is a big one. Say if we're doing noise monitoring, they have the right to know their noise levels, air monitoring for whatever contaminant, etc. Okay, and again, the right and laws that they have through that poster. They do have a right to see that in their workplace. They also have a right to participate in OSHA inspection if they so choose. If they have, something else, the inspectors come in for a certain complaint or a program inspection, and they have something that they don't feel comfortable with, they can certainly participate in that inspection and direct that inspector to say, hey, come look in this storage room, I didn't want to say anything, but there's something going on in there, and they have a right to do that and to work with those inspectors, okay? And then repeating again, they have the right to exercise all of these without fear of retaliation, our whistleblower compliance, okay? Here at the Department of Labor, we have our own legal team that investigates those whistleblower complaints. The feds, they have a huge division specialized. They actually oversee, I think, 20 different acts or more of whistleblower protection. So if we want to file a complaint, I should say, here it is, okay? So again, there is federal OSHA and con OSHA. At the end of the day, maybe with some time, it will get to the right folks. Again, I know these URLs are a little bit large, but if we put in OSHA complaint form, it'll go there. If we put in con OSHA complaint, it will come to our website. But there they are, so you do have a right to file a complaint. And again, whoever you are, if you're a manager and you want to put some complaint because maybe your supervisors or something are not providing you guys with the resources, okay? If you're an employee, again, same thing. You spoke up, you keep speaking up, or you didn't speak up at all, you can certainly reach out to us with that complaint. All right, so that's our complaint. Talk a little bit more about whistleblower protections quickly, what that really means and what I say that for us. So again, the OSHA Act prohibits employers from retaliating against their employees for using the rights under the OSHA Act. These rights, as we've been speaking throughout this presentation, any safety or health concern, reporting a work-related injury, filing a complaint altogether, participating if they were working with an OSHA inspector, and participating or testifying. Okay, interesting, a note here for our whistleblower protection. State employees, municipalities, anyone under our jurisdiction, you have quite a bit of time, so thanks for that. We have 180 days, a little bit more time to, if you feel, hey, I really need to put in this complaint. 180 days from that act of retaliatory behavior, you can put a complaint in with our legal division. The feds, it's not so giving, just 30 days. So if something happened, you need to let them know quite quickly. 30 days, and those inspectors, the whistleblower investigators, have 90 days to respond back. So their whole process is quite a bit quicker. Again, as I mentioned, kind of their department, they're pretty good at what they do. They have a lot of acts that they oversee. So examples of retaliation that might fall under what we consider our Whistleblower Act, retaliatory behavior. Here's a long list of things: blacklisting, firing or laying off, making threats, all the way down to suspension. So this has either happened to you or you see it ongoing, or you guys are the ones doing this behavior. All right, just know that this may have some implications. So let's talk about our inspections now. So how our inspectors, why they come out, when they come out, the priorities that we follow here at OSHA. I will say right off the bat, though, at Con OSHA, thankfully we don't have too much, imminent danger things going on or too many complaints. So we do a lot of program inspections, which is kind of counter to the feds who are almost solely doing complaint inspections. But in priority list here, the first is, of course, imminent danger. If somebody is about to die, we are going to send somebody out there sort of ASAP. Fatality and catastrophe, these are kind of those big, right, national events. You guys see them, then always somewhere down the line is OSHA involved, right? What's the big one? The bridge that collapsed, right? OSHA's involved. The train that derailed, OSHA's involved, right? Federal size of things. Again, thankfully, here in the state of Connecticut, I don't think, Lisa, we haven't had any catastrophes in recent years, right? I think COVID was probably the biggest thing that we've done with that. So thankfully, not too much catastrophes going on. Complaints, we do, yes, receive them through our online complaint form, or even somebody calling into the office and then filling out a form. Most, I would say, is handled through the online complaint form. And then down there to our program inspections. Again, repeating myself there, it's kind of, the question that you guys always ask, hey, why was my town the one that you guys chose? Okay, well, we do have a list that every so many years, I think it's about 7 to 10 years or so, that we're going to every single municipality, town, state agency out there on a kind of a rotating basis. So the process a little bit more, so when they do show up, regardless if it was a complaint or if it was a planned inspection, this is how our officers are doing this. Why I mention it to you guys, hopefully, we don't have any fraudsters out there, but God forbid that does happen. If you kind of see a little bit of wonky process going on, maybe question, but our process is pretty formal, pretty straightforward. They will show up, they will they'll ask for somebody in charge. They'll present their credentials, all right? So during the opening conference, they will say why they are there, whether, again, it was a specific complaint and only focused on that, or whether or not they're doing a broad inspection, okay? So then they will continue with their walkthrough. Again, this might be limited if it was a complaint. They're only looking at something specific versus, again, a wall-to-wall inspection, something that was more comprehensive. Our COSHOs will ask to interview employees or their representatives. We'll talk quickly about representatives in a second. We're going to review records. The 300 logs are something that we are certainly going to ask for. And at the end of the day, or maybe down the road, depending on the scope of the inspection, we're going to have a closing conference where we're going to talk about those apparent violations, all right? At that point, we're not arguing with our inspectors, okay, because they're just kind of data collectors, if you will. All right, they're taking pictures, measurements, interviews, and stuff like that. They're going to take it back to our office, and then they're going to sit down, they're going to formalize everything, and then they're going to hand it over to our lovely lady here in the room, our supervisor with our director, and then they become formalized after that, after a thorough review process, okay? So that's just a piece that we see a lot of the times where they're arguing with the inspector. Hopefully not. We have a good relationship. We're there kind of to help. We're not really trying to, hurt. And our fines, I'll show you guys our fines in a second here. They're not huge. That's not the point. We're trying to advance, again, safety and health and our programs out there. But at that point, they're just data collection, and then the fines will become set after the closing conference, and then they can go to an informal conference after to discuss those at a later date with, again, director or supervisor. We'll talk about that in a second. So the representative, I mentioned that. I wanted to talk to you guys about representative because uniquely here, OSHA, we have a lot of unions, right? So that's a big role for us, kind of conversely, on the Fed side, maybe not too many unions. So for us, almost every inspection, a lot of towns going to have some type of union representatives there. So these are representatives that they do have the ability to definitely participate in our inspections. And sometimes, right, the employee is so fearful of their job that they can just go to those representatives altogether and file the complaint for them, okay? So the rights of employees, employee representatives, again, must be given an opportunity to participate in all phases. Again, is the process that I just introduced to you guys moments ago. They also have the right to talk privately with our COSHOs, our compliance, safety, and health officers. That's what we call them, COSHOs. When there is no authorized employee representative, the OSHA must talk to a reasonable number of workers themselves. Okay, we need to make sure that there are exposure to certain hazards. We talk to those employees directly. All right, they also receive copies of the citations. During the process, again, our data collectors, if you will, our COSHOs, are going to gather all that information, whether it's the town managers, whoever's the highest level, any of our directors, and then any of our employee representatives, all going to get a copy, so they're all fully aware of what actually was cited. And they also have the option to participate in this informal conference that, again, I will talk about in a second. Again, the black and white right from the regulation, just some clarity on that. That has been kind of maybe point of contention, some in the news about what an employee representative is, who it can be, who it can't be. Again, a little bit of political. Yes, we are a regulatory body, so right, union, no union. Well, this is what it says in black and white for us, and this is what we follow as well. Again, right from the feds, you can find this 1903.8. C, okay? So again, it's the same for us. It's up to the COSHO, okay? So it's up to the COSHO to say, yeah, you're a union representative, you're going to be helpful for the inspection, you can certainly participate. Whereas Joe Schmo, who has no idea from his left hand from his right hand, you're not going to be helpful, you're just getting in the way. It's up to the COSHO. Again, the COSHO is directing this kind of gathering of information, and they're the ones that can say, you know, hey, you're not too helpful for the inspection. It is up to them. All right, so employer-employee representatives, they may accompany the COSHO during the physical walkthrough. This is, again, aiding, right? So maybe showing some things, helping. Maybe they don't want to reveal an employee that maybe put the complaint in, for example. Again, as I just repeating again, the COSHO is in charge, right? They're the ones directing this inspection. Where COSHO is authorized to deny the right of accompaniment under this section to any person whose conduct interferes with a fair and orderly inspection. All right, so here after the inspection, so right, that formal process, they have the information, they have some citations that we're thinking about. We're going to start assessing some small penalties to those. So again, an OSHA inspection may or may not result in some citations. Citations inform employer and employees of the regulations and standards violated and the proposed time for abatement. Usually it's some amount of time after, maybe 30 days. We can get some extension depending on what that program is that was violated. Employer must post a copy of each citation where the violation occurred or where employees have access to them for a minimum of 3 days or until it's corrected. All right, so this informal conference that I've been alluding to. We highly recommend it after an inspection. This is a time where you guys can sit down with our team and discuss each individual item, why things were cited at that, the penalty, and what can we do, right? What can we do to fix these things, right? And again, maybe that's through our consultation that will be recommended, maybe through some outreach training, like myself coming out speaking to those employees. Again, this informal conference must be done within 15 days. So the citations are issued, they become final if we don't go to the informal, right? We always recommend go to the informal within 15 days. After that informal, an agreement is signed, those penalties and citations are final at that moment. No questions asked. All right, so talk about the citations and penalties. Again, presenting the information, both federal side and public side. So this is for our private side of the house friends that are here today. So these are your citations and penalties and what they'll look like, again, under 1903-15. These are, again, proposed by the inspector until they're established by the director, or in the Fed side, an AAD, area director, or at our office, the director. So we have a couple of different types. Most of the time they're serious, okay? We go out for the first time, we see a hazard there, and we've established a serious violation. On the private side, it's up to $16,500 every year, thanks to President Obama. Every single year, those are bigger and bigger and bigger, okay? So this year just updated last month, $16,500 for the serious failure to abate every day and other than serious. Okay? For our willful and our repeated, there's a times 10 multiplier there. So that means that if we went out one time, we saw, for example, one we'll talk about in the public side, fire extinguisher. You guys had the fire extinguisher not where it was supposed to be, or it wasn't charged. Okay, we're gonna, obviously ours is a little bit different, but if it's a private sector, they're gonna say somewhere in the ballpark, maybe $8,000. Okay? Then they come down 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, they go and they see that fire extinguisher still not there. Well, it was $8,000 then. Guess how much it is now? $80,000. Okay, so that's how the private side works. Again, private money, bigger fines, a little bit of a more impact, if you will, to that company. Okay, the willful and the repeated, though, we do have extra steps that we have to follow to see, you know, what was kind of the determination behind that. For willful, we really have to have an understanding that the employer knew that there was a standard, knew they should have done something, and they chose not to do that. So the willful, there's a little bit more investigation behind that. That's the private side of the things. This is the federal. This is us. Okay, this is right in our statute again, 31, 382 penalties for us. You might ask yourself, well, why you said we have to be as strict as ours? A little bit different for the penalties, okay? We don't have to follow that $16,000 model. This is our penalties. It's been for a number of years. Again, it's taxpayer dollars to taxpayer dollars, right? It's taking funds because you guys kind of didn't follow some safety and health regulations, going back into the general fund. No, it doesn't go to fund our specific program, okay? So serious, other than serious, up to 1,000, again, typically somewhere in there through a calculation that we have, the gravity, the number of employees, et cetera, going to be some number in between there. But if we come out down the road, again, at maybe another programmed inspection that we did, and we see the exact same thing, you guys chose not to follow what we told you that you had to do under the law, okay, maybe we're going to assess something up to $10,000. All right. I mentioned a couple of times about our on-site consultation program. Here's our slide dedicated to that, and the link, as you notice, this time there's only one URL versus the complaint form that had two, right? Remember before, we are the only ones, Con Osha, the only office that has the consultation, okay? Some benefits of it. It's at the request of the employer, so it's not us, although you can use that terms lightly, it's not us telling you that you have to have a consultation. We can suggest it to you, but again, it's up to these directors, the town managers, whatever, some high-level employee that is going to request this consultation. Again, either using our form or through one of our management. Okay, this program is free. I like to put an asterisk sometimes. We don't have the asterisk here, but it's free with an asterisk, right? Everyone will say nothing in life is free. Well, the program is free. You're not actually going to pay any fees to Con Osha for the time that our consultants spent with you guys. But if we jump down to this bottom one here, employers must correct. So yes, if we do identify anything through our consultation, that they have to be corrected. Okay, an example. A guardrail. We see the consultant comes out, there's 4 feet, 6 feet, depending on what we're doing, and there's a hazard there, and you need to put in some guardrail. Okay, you don't have to pay the citation, you don't have to pay the penalty according to the citation, but you do have to still fix it under the consultation, so there's a cost there. Okay, but we always kind of argue the point, that's a pretty good cost because you had to do it anyways, right? And it's going to protect your employees. All right, that's just a simple example. There's a myriad of different things, whether it be program, other training, etc. Okay, the scope determined by you guys. Maybe you call us up. Hey, I just have issues with my lockout tagout program. You know, I want to review just that. Okay, certainly give us a call on that, and they'll focus on just that. Then maybe over time we suggest to expand it. Maybe we're going to talk about some other our EAPs or our HASCOM program after that. But right, it's up to you guys to kind of determine how we're going to go. Again, repeating, no citation monetary penalties. Okay, record keeping requirements, a few more on those. Emphasize here, again, differences between public sector and private sector. Repeating myself that we all must in the public sector keep records. Okay, everyone. There's no exemptions. You look up online, OSHA.gov, and you'll see different NAICS codes, North American Classification codes, that say, oh, I'm exempt. All right, whether it be some library or school or whatever. Nope. I know for sure that the libraries and schools are on the list, but not here in the state of Connecticut. This list is exempt. Okay? We must record all work-related injuries and illnesses. Of course, these are things like deaths, loss of consciousness, days away, restricted medical treatment beyond first aid. Not going to spend any more time than just this slide because we can talk 2 hours, 3 hours on just record keeping. Okay? They must be recorded within 7 days. Again, we have to use these 300, 300A, or 301. Or equivalent. Sometimes we have some insurance agency or body like that that's more strict. Maybe they ask more information, and that's fine. Okay, they must be posted. Again, we're seeing in this time frame today, of course, February 1st to April 30th, they need to be posted there. Again, the lunchroom, where the people clock in, etc. Okay, records need to be kept for at least 5 years, and then after that, they can be destroyed. So now into the fun stuff, right? So the intro kind of piece out of the way. Pretty good on time here. I think we spend the next few minutes on some citations directly to you guys and some images directly to you guys. So this is kind of information for you guys. I actually just reviewed this data myself. So we look here, we have the specific date, water and wastewater treatment facilities. I've combined them into two groups, even though, yes, I understand you guys do a little bit different. But overall, these are 10 things that, I sort of want you guys to take back. We as Con OSHA want you to take back and really focus on these. And why is it focus on these? Because this is definitely what the compliance inspector is going to look at, guaranteed. They're going to come in and they're going to look at these because history tells us that everyone's violating these standards, okay? So again, back to this date here, it's 5 fiscal years, okay? So our fiscal year follows the federal fiscal year. So it starts October and ends September. So that's why, again, this is our most recent. We're in fiscal year 25 now. But the most recent that we have data for up to fiscal year 24. So again, fiscal year 20 all the way through 24. Okay? So for us, again, because we're obviously smaller, we kind of use the 5-year period versus the feds that can use kind of a single year. I also today have the feds top 10 as well. But if we look at for you guys directly, we see the number one. This is 1910. All of your guys is actually under general industry, not construction standard, 1926. So all of them 1910. And we'll see the top one here, 151. This is for medical services and first aid. It's a pretty straightforward black and white paragraph that has a lot of interpretation to it. So whether or not it's straightforward or not, So eye washes. It says that you have to have an eye wash when there's a corrosive. Okay, that's my straightforward statement, but what does that mean, right? How much time do we have to access that? Is it kept clean? What's the rate? What's the temperature of the water? All of these things. But when we see eye wash and it's never been touched in 5 years and it's dirty, I have a picture I'll show you later on of an interesting point that you can see from the picture. Again, citation. So guys, pay attention to our eye washes. Make sure that they're kept clean. Make sure that we inspect them regularly. Portable fire extinguishers. This is another one that we're seeing all the time. And what do we think that extinguisher is best used for? On a nice hot summer day. There it is, right? Thanks to my friend in the front row. A doorstop, right? Of course, it's not to be used for that, and it's a great, take the picture, here's your citation, right? It needs to be mounted, it needs to be kept where it's supposed to be, and then it also needs to be inspected regularly. We have our monthly inspections as well as our annual inspections, okay? So again, these top 10 are just kind of generic, kind of the standard altogether. There are many different subparts like, 157A, B, C, or 150A, I, for example. So I just overall today talking about the general categories and of course many different citations associated with each of these. HAZCOM, a great example, okay? So HAZCOM here in our third spot, which maybe if we kind of added all of the difference together, it would be way beyond our first. It would be like way up there because there's several different pieces of the HAZCOM program that we see all the time. So when we ask for the HAZCOM program, you don't have it, well, there's 5 citations right in itself, right? So we probably didn't do training, we probably don't have our SDS sheets, we don't have a program altogether, okay? So again, some of these standards have several pieces to them that we cite. But hazard communication, again, if you have hazardous chemicals in the workplace, we need to document that and we need to train our employees on those hazards. Pretty straightforward. The control of hazardous energy, one that I like to talk about because everyone thinks it's electrical, controlling electrical hazards. Nope, that's not what I said. It's the control of all hazardous energy forms, okay? So it's hydraulic, maybe it's water, maybe it's some type of stored energy, solar, etc. There's many forms. We need to make sure that they're all controlled there in our workplaces. Again, we call this our lockout tagout program. Several pieces to it, having a program, the training, and what are our employees? Are they an affected employee? Are they an authorized employee, etc.? Our 1910-215, our abrasive wheel, maybe you call this the low-hanging fruit. We see the bench grinder there. We go up, we take their tape measure, and bam, it's 1 inch the tongue guard, 1 inch the work rest, citation, right? We need to have a 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch, okay? That's what we're looking for, pretty easy. Tells us that our supervisors, our foremen, maybe the employee wasn't trained to adjust that properly on a continuing basis, okay? So things, very, very simple things that, again, maybe just not addressed appropriately. 1910-146 for our permit required confined spaces. This might be that the spaces weren't labeled altogether. The employees didn't know it was a permit required confined space. Maybe they're entering these spaces when they shouldn't, and they should be under a permit program. Okay, 1910-1450. This is an interesting one specifically for you guys. I believe we will not see it in the top 10 for overall inspections because for you guys itself, you typically have these laboratories there, some type of water testing, and you guys fall under this specific standard when those employees are using chemicals in laboratory settings. Okay, 1910-132 for PPE. Again, we need to see a hazard assessment that the employer has done to say, hey, what are the work boots that we need? Or what are the specific gloves that we need, splash goggles, et cetera. There needs to be some type of hazard assessment for each PPE that we use. 1910-22, this is our walking working surface standard. Again, we kind of frequently hear the construction standard for 6 feet, falls from 6 feet. Well, in 1910, general industry, it's actually just 4 feet. Okay, so that's where our walking working surfaces come from. Specifically, though, for this one, walking working surface is just for cleanliness, all right? So it's not too wet or there's not debris collected. That's where we see walking working surface. But again, both of those big ones for us. 4 feet for protection, and then again, cleanliness. Also, when I took the data as well, interesting for you guys, there was several noise violations as well. So if we're exposed to those loud, maybe whirring motors and things like that, and we're under the noise standard, 90 is our PEL, our permissible exposure limit, 85 for our hearing conservation. Most of us, a lot of the noise violation is going to be for hearing conservation, right? Did our employees get those annual audiograms? Were they trained annually? That's our noise standard. So yeah, pretty interesting. That's the data for you guys. That's what we see. 10 things that you guys should go back and make sure that you're good on today, because who knows down the road, maybe tomorrow, maybe next month, maybe a year, 2 years, our inspector is going to pay you guys a visit. And certainly, I almost guarantee they're going to ask about these specifics. All right, so switch gears to overall Con OSHA. This is our data. Interesting for, again, the last 5 fiscal years, the most recent that we have. So a little bit different, but still up there in the top. We see fire extinguisher and HAZCOM again, as well as eye washes in our first aid standard. We have a couple of different ones here now. So we have electrical. This is 303. As well as we see here in the top 10 at the 9th spot, 305. So this is for appliances, maybe power strips, flexible cords, extension cords, maybe in the electrical control panel, missing circuits, etc. So we have some images to show for that as well. That's where we get those violations, 303, 305. All right, also we have a lot of jack inspection issues out there, 244. Again, this is to make sure that a jack that is frequently used every 6 months, we need to see that inspection. All right, so that needs to have some type of log associated with that. Again, PPE, specifically the hazard assessment, and then we've already talked about walking working surfaces and lockout tag out. So pretty much you guys are in line with what we're seeing across the board, public works, parks and recs, police, fire, etc. This is a little bit different though, okay? So the feds, this is a lot bigger data set out there. This is their most recent official one. Of course, there's fiscal year 24 that is kind of coming to light, but this is the most official recent data. Okay, 1926 for fall protection. As I was mentioning, it's a kind of a huge topic for us, me as an outreach person, talking a lot about fall protection. 6 feet for construction, again, 4 feet for general industry. There again, makes sense, right in line with us here in the state, hazard communication. We also see ladder violations. I showed you guys earlier on, right, that guy kind of sitting atop the ladder. Well, there's a ladder violation. If he wasn't trained to not do that, certainly a citation that we could give. Scaffolding, powered industrial trucks, forklifts, again, similar to us, lockout, tagout in the 6th spot. Respiratory protection specifically of our PPE standards. This was obviously big with COVID and other respiratory hazards and infectious diseases out there, continues to be in the top 10 as well. Not just for infectious disease healthcare, but obviously many other respiratory hazards as well. Maybe it's silica. Silica is one of our emphasis as well here in the state. Training, this is an interesting one that made to the top 10, training itself of the standards. So again, you can show how important training is to us. PPE for eye and face protection specifically, and then in the last spot, machine guarding. So these are the top 10 I'm going to show before we end. Have a few minutes left before we get into questions. I do have a few pictures just to show you guys associated with what we're actually meaning with these specific citations. But first, I just want to add a couple more things specific to you guys, requirements that, again, associated with the citations, but again, written programs, okay? This is definitely something that our inspectors are going to be asking about when they show up. They're going to ask, where is it? And they're going to simply do it like this. They're going to say, please show me your confined space program, your lockout tagout program, HAZCOM program. Thank you, have a nice day, right? And we need to actually have that. We need to have a good program that lays out all of those things that we do. And then our inspector is going to take the time to actually review that. When was the last time that it was reviewed? How do we train our employees on that? What are the spaces? Do we have things that should be included that aren't, or things that are included that shouldn't be, right? Both ways. All right, as well as the chemical hygiene plan, emergency action, right? Something goes off. Does the red alarm go off, meaning maybe fire? Or does the green alarm go off and maybe that means some chemical release, all right? And again, what is our action plan on that? I always say when it comes to this, just calling 911 gonna always solve our issues? Maybe not, right? A huge thing that we talk about with fall protection is when I pick up 911, hey, my guy's dangling up there, yeah, thankfully he had his harness on. How long do you think it's going to take for the fire department to get there, right? Maybe 15 minutes, right? Guess what? In 15 minutes, it might already be too late. Thankfully, the harness saved him, but guess what? We didn't have a plan to get the guy down before the fire department even got there, okay? So our emergency response plan, pretty big deal. There are a couple of these that have asterisks. It's because the way the statute is written that the program itself doesn't necessarily have to be writing, but we might need to have some type of communication of those hazards, okay? PPE is one of those big ones that we kind of see from time to time. We know to wear the hard hat. We know to wear our gloves, okay? But what was the hazard? We actually need to have a written certification that somebody some time ago said that, yeah, we work with bleach, and we need to have a chemical resistant glove to that. This is the specific one, written certification for that. Okay? Respiratory protection, interesting versus our mandatory and voluntary. Okay, if it's a voluntary use, yeah, there's maybe some nuisance dust out there, but not meeting our permissible exposure limits, maybe you're going to do voluntary use. Okay, but still, even at voluntary use, there's some burden to that individual's health, so you need to have the Appendix D of our statute, okay, of our standard. Versus mandatory use, you need to have a whole program and a lot of requirements there, maybe respiratory questionnaire, going to the doctor, fit test, etc. All right, and then finally our hearing conservation program as well. All right, other specifics for water and wastewater facilities that we're asking for. Here's another list, again, not exhaustive, but quite a bit. All right, eye washes, cranes, slings, lifts, jacks. Again, all of these things kind of related back to what I just showed you with the top 10. That's why I think it's really, really cool slides here at the end for you guys directly. And some other things here as well. Training, again, this is that document that I was speaking of that federal OSHA's put out. It was updated 2015. It's like, again, like I said, 300-page document, but it's a really great document because it says the specific training requirements of each standard that's out there, okay? For our folks here today, here you go. These are things that we're looking that need to training. Again, myself as an outreach person, I do a lot of different outreach trainings on these topics. Again, they're big ones for us. They could in the top 10 year after year after year. Some citations that we again, situations where I should say we see some, pretty bad accidents, things happening with these, all right? So here's a pretty good list of training. If you guys kind of feel some deficiencies on some of these, many of these, please reach out to us, help you out with that. Again, maybe it's our consultation, maybe it's myself as outreach person. Okay, so getting into ending the presentation with some of the visual stuff now, right? Oh, thank God, I've been speaking to you guys, an hour almost already? So now we can kind of take a look at some of these images. Actual, real images. Hopefully, maybe you guys don't recognize these facilities. It may be one of your facilities. I don't know, probably is. But again, right, real information. This is the cool stuff. This is what everyone always wants, the OSHA, and they always want to see, okay, no, I don't have any injuries and dead people, thankfully. I just have images of potential hazards here, okay? All related to what we talked about in the top 10. So we're looking at here, some guardrail issues, so maybe confined space issues that we see, that could be a citation, right? These ones, confined space, are they labeled, are they not labeled? Again, what is behind that? Is it a space? Lisa's gonna chime in a few, because again, these may or may not be her pictures.
Yeah, is it, okay. Sorry, yeah, these are all pictures that I've taken out on inspections when I've done them. And just to preface this, not all of them are violations. Some of them are just to show some hazards that might be present at some of these locations. So if you see your facility and you see something, you're like, hey, that's not a violation, it may not be. Okay, I just wanted to preface that.
Excellent. So again, a confined space, our confined space standard requires some type of employee awareness, whether that be through signs, very easy, or through some training means. But as you can see here, I'm not sure what these are, right? If we open them up, is something going to come flying at me, right? So maybe some signage there is or is not required. Some machine guarding issues, right? Some rotating parts. So this is a really interesting one for us, right? We always think that the manufacturers are doing the best and they're the greatest. Well, maybe sometimes they're actually, leaving some things out there for hazards in itself. So even though this is the way that it was designed by manufacturer, maybe we need to have some extra third-party parts to actually make sure that we're compliant with the standard. Because maybe the manufacturer intended it to be, say, in a room, that the room itself was, say, the machine guard for this. But if this is out and employees have access to it, maybe getting their hair, fingers, etc., body parts into these rotating parts, again, could be a violation. Same thing here, we see some more rotating parts. These shaft here, these are the same machines there at the top, a different one down here at the bottom. But again, same thing, rotating parts, how are we protecting those and our employees from getting the body parts into those? All right, slings, okay, material handling issues for us. What does our inspection look like on those? Do we allow our employees to keep using this, right? Managers, supervisors out there, take a second, walk through our shops. So we see this hanging there, no one let us know, it wasn't cut up, destroyed, thrown away. Be that person, cut it up, throw it away, destroy it, get the new ones that are going to be used, okay? Fire extinguishers, right? There's some pictures of those, right, telling us a lot of things. Monthly inspection tag, we see it on there, maybe it wasn't done for the last however many months, right? Kind of see the inspector, maybe this door was propped open, the guy maybe did the little foot deal to try to, not have it opening the door. Still, is that the proper space for it to be? Again, a lot of different citations that we find when it comes to portable fire extinguishers. Okay, here's our electrical standard one that we're seeing. Electrical tape. Well, electrical tape is actually not good protection here. We actually need to have some type of a cover or maybe the circuit that's supposed to be there. That's a hazard for us that cannot be opened. Our eye wash, again, as Lisa was kind of alluding, maybe this is perfect. Again, I don't know. This is just an image to show you guys. Again, is it clean? When was it inspected? How is there, on the other side of this picture, is there a big box that is going to be in our way, right? You always have to think about kind of the bigger picture, right? When actually somebody needs to go to use this, they can't actually see the way to get there, right? They only maybe remember. So if we have things in our way that are trip hazards, etc., it's going to be kind of defeating the purpose altogether, okay? This is the image that I was going to emphasize something here. If we look closely at it, right? It looks perfect, right? Eye wash, nice there up on the wall, clean, ready to access, until we look nice and close at to what the bottle said. I know it's maybe a little bit harder. We look here, nice and close. I guess this mic really is not going to hear me at all. We look nice and close to this image here. Can anyone see in the front row what this date here? No, it's okay. Well, I'll tell you guys. Right, if we look nice and close at this bottle, the date on it says 1998. 1998 was the expiration date. And if you, I don't have it zoomed in here, but I tried to underline it. And if we look at the picture was taken in 21. 23 years expired. All right, just saying. Okay. Lisa's going to chime in because, again, it's her picture. This is Lisa, everybody's supervisor here. Maybe some of you guys know her.
So the other thing about this eye wash here is it doesn't meet the requirements of the standard. You want 3 gallons a minute for 15 minutes. So you really need something that's plumbed. And I know sometimes in some of the remote buildings at the facility, you don't always have plumbing, so sometimes what you could do are those large wall-mounted units, but again, you also have to maintain those too. You have to keep a preservative, you may have to change out the fluid, I think maybe every 6 months or so to make sure that the preservative is doing what it does, because certainly if you've got some sort of chemical in your eye, and now you go and use bacteria-filled water, that's not really helping your issue there. So I just wanted to make another note about that.
Absolutely. And I think you can.
Do you want me to talk about?
Sure. PPE issues and cleanliness of our PPE.
Yeah, so here I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Great that people are using PPE, but be careful where you're storing them. You know, I certainly wouldn't want to put that eye on my eyes, though I don't even know how you would see out of something like that. So be careful about where you're storing your personal protective equipment.
And this also goes for our respiratory protection, right? It's easy, hang it up there, but again, if it's dirty, bacteria infested, et cetera, something that needs to be changed out. Again, part of our training, right? It makes, you know, kind of common sense, if you will, that, you know, dirty PPE, you need to replace it, but if no one was trained that what the limitations are on it, then maybe really the employee doesn't know.
As Bobby mentioned earlier, jack inspections at a minimum every 6 months, and you need to be able to see the load rating on the jack at all times. So what happens is as the labels start to get removed, you lose that information. Sometimes people will paint on them and it gets covered up with grease, other things. So really one of the things that I've seen best, if you can't maintain that label on there, one of the ways that I've seen people address that is to weld the load rating on there, and the weld seems to hold up pretty well. You just sometimes have to clean it off to be able to make sure you can always see that. Overhead crane and hoist inspections, you got to make sure you're doing those, I think, on a periodic basis, maybe annually. I always lose track of what goes what. So that's just kind of what that picture is depicting. You have to obviously make sure that the load is always visible, legible on the parts, the rail, and the hoist itself. And on the far picture, you can see where the clip is damaged. So inspections would identify those types of deficiencies.
This is why I really brought her up, because this is an inspection that she actually was on. It was a serious instance. You want to explain the story?
Yeah, so this, I don't know if everybody here is primarily wastewater treatment, or if we do have some water folks here. This one was, the employer had a spill of 3,000 gallons of sodium hypochlorite, 12.5%. And in fairness, they wanted to be able to continue the water supply, so they were trying to address it quickly. However, in doing so, they really put their employees in harm's way. They sent an employee in, among other deficiencies, in boots that looked like this. These are not chemical resistant boots. As you can clearly see, the hypochlorite just ate right through the boot. So that's a big problem. The employee ended up with chemical burns on his feet. So Bobby mentioned earlier about emergency response. And in addition to be able to make sure that people can respond in a timely manner for certain things, for facilities that are going to provide their own emergency response for chemical spills, you have to have an emergency response plan. And you need to be prepared. And the biggest question that I ask employers when I'm evaluating this is, you have to start with, what do you want your employees to do? Do you want them to just say, hey, we're getting out of here? In which case you would have an emergency action plan, emergency evacuation plan. If you need your employees to respond, and a lot of times in water facilities, water treatment facilities, they do need to respond, in which case you need to have a full emergency response plan. Probably awareness level training is not sufficient. You probably need some ops level training, which is a little bit high, is quite a bit higher, requires a greater number of hours. You can't just send people in and say, okay, go in and try and stop this. You need to have a plan in place and think about contingency plans and what you're going to do so that we're not doing something like this. You know, they were kind of wading through like a few inches of the sodium hypochlorite in the facility. So, okay. Same thing, they were using these sort of, I don't even know what the material is for sodium hypochlorite. It's a corrosive. This face shield is not going to protect employees from splashes of sodium hypochlorite. This one we see a lot at wastewater treatment facilities, at the bar screen, and the influence coming through. And so you've got an unprotected, open-sided work area where employees can fall in. I mean, I know you guys work around this every day, but I absolutely would not want to fall in there, and I imagine most of you would not as well. So you need to make sure that area is protected, and I understand that's a little tricky because I know what I've understood is you want to try to get in there with a rake or some other piece of equipment to gather some of the solids out. So it's really a balance of providing fall protection for your employees when they're working near and around those areas, but also being able to fulfill your needs to be able to get those solids out. So that's what that's showing. And again, so there are specific requirements, open-sided, unguarded open-sided platforms, fall protection, 19, 10, 28, and 29. You need to have guardrails. They have to be able to support 200 pounds of force. You need to have an upper top rail, 42 inches, plus or minus 3, as well as a mid-rail. These chains, we see these a lot, and the problem is, they would not support 200 pounds of force. That's kind of the biggest thing there. The only way that you can probably even get anything close to that is if that chain is that taut, you wouldn't even be able to get it clipped and unclipped because it would have to be so tight. So we need, really, you need a solid guardrail, upper, top rail, and mid rail.
And as she mentioned as well, this picture on the left, there are specific height requirements. So we want to see 42 plus or minus 3, and then a mid-rail, halfway, mid-rail. This one here, 8 inches, all right? That's not even good as a mid-rail or a toe board, let alone. So a lot of things going on with these particular images here. So excellent. So these were the images that we wanted to share with you guys. Just kind of in conclusion here, a couple of last points for our supervisors, managers here today. So again, learn about our applicable standards through all of the information we presented, those images, the top 10, again, calling us, using our consultation services, using our training services, our outreach presentations. We have a quarterly as well. I'm going to share with you guys in just a second, but it's probably best you just visit our website, conosha.com, and access it there, but I do have a slide on it. Clearly communicate the policies and procedures through written programs or, again, through training. We also make sure that consistently enforce work rules, policies, procedures. We don't want to see those guys riding in the backhoe or sitting on our ladders. Talk and listen to the employees. This is a really big one when we talk about PPE, right? The goggles that they wear, are they actually really comfortable to use? The gloves that they're having, are they small, medium, large, extra large? You know, we have a bigger person like, say, maybe me, and only available small, right? Talk to our guys, hey, this is not, you know, make sure that we're really fulfilling those needs. And of course, be present, right? Go and visit those work sites on some type of basis. This is the quarterly if you guys are interested. If you're not already enrolled, we have huge database of people that we send this out to. Our last one just went out. I do have a couple copies on the back table there. A couple of other pieces of information will be here for an hour or so around lunch. If you guys want to grab anything there or come say hi. But we do send this publication out. We do we spend quite a bit of time on there trying to really get topics that are relevant to you guys as public sector with the quarterly. All right? And with that, sorry if I went a few minutes over. I know I'm between you guys and lunch, so I know we're all excited for lunch. Lisa,
Sorry, one more point, because this is something that we cite all the time in wastewater treatment facilities. With your permit required confined space program for rescue operations, a lot of times when we ask people, if you get somebody, that loses consciousness in the hole, what are you going to do? And they'll tell us, we're going to call 911. But the problem is not every town is equipped, every emergency services are equipped to be able to do confined space rescue. So the big part of having your permit required confined space program is identifying what you're going to do for response, and you have to evaluate the rescuer's ability to rescue one of your employees from the hole, and also can they do it in a timely manner. So that's such an important part. We cite that pretty much everywhere we go, because I think people just say, oh, we're going to call 911 and think that that's going to solve it. But that's really a very important point that I wanted to stress to you all. Okay.
And I think maybe, I don't know, Terrence, or if there's any questions that anyone has for Lisa or myself.
All right, well, Lisa and Robert, thank you so much.